Working the night shift at Walmart isn't the most exciting job, but it has its perks. There are few customers, it's quiet, and most of the time I just have to take inventory and restock shelves. My area is the electronics section, which is rarely visited at 2 a.m. The occasional truck driver stops by to buy a charging cable or Bluetooth headphones, but otherwise, it's just a quiet corner in a large store. So when the man showed up, I took notice. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just another customer walking through the shelves. But then I realized he wasn't buying anything. Every time I glanced back, he was in a different spot, never leaving my sight for too long. He wasn't picking anything up, he wasn't looking at the shelves, he was just standing there, as if he was watching me. I told myself he might be waiting for someone, but my gut told me otherwise. He wanted me to notice his presence. I tried to call the manager on the walkie-talkie, but it didn't work. The battery was dead. He didn't approach. Didn't say anything, just stood there from area to area, watching me. As I began to feel the need to leave, a hand suddenly grabbed mine. I jumped, turned around, but it wasn't him. It was a woman, a stranger, but her smile was somehow familiar. "Ah, there you are," she said loudly, her voice faked with joy. "I've been looking for you." I never met her before, but the way she acted like an old friend left me speechless. Then she leaned close to my ear and whispered, "That guy's filming you. Follow me." I felt a chill run down my spine. She continued to act like we were old friends who hadn't seen each other in a long time. I glanced back. The man was still standing there. But this time, I felt a chill run down my spine. She continued to act like we were old friends who hadn't seen each other in a long time. I glanced back. The man was still standing there. But this time, he wasn't pretending to look at the goods anymore. He was staring at me, his face expressionless, his eyes unwavering. I let the woman lead me away, because at least she didn't seem as scary as he did. But as I started following her through the aisles, I realized we were moving away from the main area of the store. The aisles became darker, quieter. Then I saw the emergency exit door behind me, no security cameras. I stopped immediately. "Where are we going?" She didn't answer, just squeezed my hand tighter. "Come on, just a little bit more." This time, her smile was no longer human. I shook her hand away, taking a few steps back. Her face hardened immediately, and I realized the terrible truth. She was with that man. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't run away right away. If I panicked, she might overpower me. So I pretended to be calm, backing away towards the area with the security cameras. "I'm not going. If there's anything we need to talk about, we can stand here." She stared at me, as if calculating something. Then I heard footsteps from behind. He was coming. I didn't wait any longer. I screamed at the top of my lungs, running straight towards the cashier. I ran to the nearest security area. As soon as they saw me, they immediately went into alert mode. But when I turned around, they were gone. Not a trace. No one saw them leave. When I checked the security cameras, the man's image was still clear, but the woman's face never appeared clearly. The police got involved, but there was no evidence other than my story. They checked every corner of the store, but found no one matching my description. But what scared me the most was when one of the security guards asked, "Are you sure that woman really exists?" After the story spread in the store, a colleague told me a creepy story. A few months ago, an employee also encountered a similar couple. They approached a female employee and asked her to come outside, but she refused. A few weeks later, she disappeared without a trace. The police could not find anything related to her disappearance. It was as if she had never existed. From that day on, I never worked the night shift alone again. But every time I approached the back door of the store, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if someone was standing there waiting. And the occasional anonymous wanderer. The night shift was usually quiet, with just me sitting behind the desk, checking reservations and waiting for the morning to come. I was used to strange guests, but that night, I encountered something inexplicable. It was about 2 a.m. and outside. The only sound was the buzzing of insects and the dim glow of flickering streetlights. I was scrolling through my phone when I saw a man standing right in front of the hotel's glass door. He didn't come in. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me through the glass, his face hidden in the darkness of his hood. After about 5 minutes, he walked in, his wet shoes clacking on the tile floor. "I need a room." His voice was low, but there was an awkwardness in the way he spoke, as if he wasn't used to using his own voice. I asked him how long he wanted to stay, but he just smiled faintly and pushed a folded bill across the counter. Without waiting for my answer, he turned and headed straight for the stairs, not taking the key, not asking for the room number. Oh, I checked the reservation system, but I didn't see him check into any rooms. I checked the security camera again, but when I watched the footage of him entering, I noticed something strange. The glass door didn't open. He didn't enter through the front door. But clearly, I saw him. I gathered up my courage and went upstairs to check. The hallway was completely empty, the light was dim and yellow, and there was only one door slightly open, room 209. But there was a big problem. This hotel didn't have a room 209. I stood in front of the door. It was dark inside. No lights, no bed, just an empty, abandoned room. No sign of life. But then, I heard a whisper. His voice. "I need a room." I ran immediately, my heart pounding, down to the front desk and called the security. When the security guard arrived, we checked room 209 together. But this time, it was gone. The door that had been slightly open was now sealed shut by an old cement wall. It was as if the room had never existed. We checked the security camera again, but this time, when I replayed the scene where he stood in front of the hotel door, I discovered something terrible. He was still there, not in the past, not on camera. He was still standing right outside the glass door, staring at me. Oh, lock the door, pull the blinds down, try not to look out. But I knew. He was still waiting. He was still watching me. He was still looking for a room. And I knew that one day, I would open the door for him again. I used to work the night shift at a gas station along the highway, where hardly anyone came after midnight. It was a small convenience store with a few dusty shelves and an old coffee machine, enough to accommodate truckers and commuters who needed a caffeine fix to get them going. I was used to the long silence between shifts, the hum of the fluorescent lights in the ceiling, the rattle of the ventilation fan, and the occasional crunch of tires on the asphalt when someone pulled in. But that day, I felt something was different. That night, I was standing outside getting some fresh air. No customers had come in for over an hour, just dim streetlights and a thin layer of fog covering the road in the distance. When I turned around to go back inside, I saw him. A man stood between the gas pumps, hands in the pockets of a dark red hoodie, head bowed. He had no car, no bag, no good reason to be standing there. My heart pounded harder when I realized he was staring at me. He walked into the store without saying a word, just quietly approaching the cashier. I was instantly alert. He looked at me for a moment and then said, "My car broke down. I need some gas." His voice was low but urgent, as if he was trying to keep his composure. I looked out the window at the parking lot. There was no car. I asked him where the car was. He pointed in a direction off in the distance, saying that his car was parked right off the highway, and that he only needed a little gas to start it up again. Something was wrong. I had been standing outside the store all evening. If a car had stopped, I would have seen it. But what was scarier was his smile. A slow, emotionless smile, as if he were waiting for me to react. I offered to call a tow truck. "No need," he said immediately. He said I just needed a hand, to follow him outside to see if the car would start. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I wasn't stupid. I knew this was a trap. I looked at the monitor behind the counter, and I froze. There was a car out there, but what sent a chill down my spine was something else. Someone was hiding behind it. A figure crouched low, trying to avoid the camera. He was still watching me, waiting for me to leave the counter. I knew if I walked out, I would never come back. I pretended to help him, took out my phone, and said, "I need to get the gas tank key in the back. Wait for me a moment." Then I backed up to the counter, pressed the alarm button under the table. The siren sounded immediately, startling him. But the scariest thing was his reaction. He didn't panic. He smiled. He turned and ran, but not towards the car. He ran straight into the woods, where the darkness swallowed him. I ran outside to get a better look, but the car was still there alone, no one inside. A moment later, the police arrived. The police checked the license plate. The car had been stolen a week ago. There was no one inside. No sign of anyone else. No footprints leading into the woods. He was gone. The police couldn't find any trace of him or the person hiding behind the car. But I knew one thing for sure. He would be back.